Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Mastermind Monday. My name's Jay Cooke. I'm an RGX coach and mentor. Usually, my specialty is communications, and today I'm excited to do one of the things I like the best about coaching, and that is to create games to help people get better results. And I think that when we look at the kinds of things we're trying to do here at RGX, which is help you make more money, help you spend less time doing it, but in the end, get better results for your clients. And when we do that, everybody wins. So today, I thought I'd do a little quick review of getting better results with on-course games. And these are games that we design based on what our students need. And when we have these games, we get all kinds of good outcomes in a really relaxed environment. So let's take a start here with why should we play games on the course anyway and on the range as well? I mean, isn't the game of golf good enough? Right? We've already got a game. Why we create other games? So I see a couple of faces that I recognize. Bo Baker, why don't you kick it off to go to your chat room and give me one reason why you play games on the course. You too, Blake. Everybody get your paper and pencil and start making some notes as to why you play games on the course. So we can all share what other people say, and I'll start out myself with a couple of topics for you to consider. Maybe it'll wrestle up some ideas for you. One is that games are entertaining, and what I find is the most important thing about coaching on the course or on the range is to help people relax. Simplify the game, help them lower their anxiety levels, because when we do, they're open to new ideas, they do better, they're less stressed, and so that's just terrific. They help build and sustain effective practice techniques. So one of the things that I found with most of the people that I coach, as a matter of fact, I would say 99.8%, is their practice techniques, knowing how to practice effectively and be able to take skills to the course are really not very good. And I think part of the reason for that is we've destined ourselves to teaching 1-hour lessons on the range, and that really doesn't help bring the game to the course. And these kind of games can really help bridge that gap. Games provide a platform for gathering measurable data. So as a coach, one of the things I want to know is how you're doing. But when I get answers like I'm doing fine, I'm not particularly motivated by that. Doesn't mean a lot to me. But most people it's hard for them to gather data when they really don't know why you're gathering, what it's for, how it's going to be used by the coach to get them better. And so when you're doing games, you design it with a scoring method along with each game. And this helps teach people that, wow, this scoring really is helpful. If I did this when I was actually playing, it'd probably give my coach a lot of actionable information. Good thing about games well designed is you can get every age and skill level, put them in the same group and play the same game, but have different outcomes for different skill levels. So as a coach, this helps. One of the questions I hear all the time is, do I have to have all the same skill level players? Do I have to have all the same age groups and things? And the answer is no. With good enough games, you don't. And this gives you a lot more flexibility on who you take onto the golf course and onto the range. One of the things I love about games is to name them. And so the more you name games, the easier it is for you to remember it and discuss it with people, and the easier it is for them to name the games that they find that are their favorites. And obviously, once I know what your favorite game is, I'm going to identify games that I want you to play because I know you like them, right? So that's part of the circuitous route here. And they can be used as a basis for awards and recognition. One of the things we're trying to do as much as we can is to build confidence and self-belief, get people feeling good about things that are uncomfortable at first while they're gaining their new skills. And so we're going to create as much as we can some way to recognize their efforts. That could be a sleeve of golf balls at the end of the practice session. It could be a wine glass, a beer mug, the kinds of things that you gather under the category of bling, right? That you give away to people, saying, "Hey, great job! Keep going. This is going to get you better and better and better." And one of the things I found that's been absolutely sensational for me the last couple of years is season-long leaderboards. So I'll post them in my office and say, "Here are the games we're going to be playing this year. It's going to be this game, this game, this game." At the end of the season, we're going to have an awards ceremony, a cocktail party with some hors d'oeuvres to celebrate a great golf season. And we're going to be taking a look at who did the best on these games. And the students absolutely love it. And they come in and they post their scores, they write it down, they yak about, "Hey, I'm kicking your ass in this game," or whatever. And you can't build that kind of esprit de corps just by saying we ought to have it. So let me see what some reaction is to this. Blake, what's your reaction to some of these ideas?
I mean, these are all fantastic. All of these I kind of use in my group sessions as well. Especially the number 2, they help build and sustain effective practice techniques. And I kind of put that in a checkbox of being able to be open-minded to different ideas that you would never kind of would think about instead of just kind of playing regular game of golf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, there is a total difference when you have players out there playing games and their level of relaxation and willingness to have a growth mindset compared to those who are out playing medal play, counting every single stroke as to whether they did good or not. That's really, really hard, particularly when you're the coach, you're there judging them. That's going to build in extra anxiety. Playing games takes that away. Yeah, so that's great, Blake. So then a note here, remember, all games can be rehearsed in practice and then taken to the course. So, for example, if you have people who aren't very high on the golf IQ measure, beginners, players who don't do a lot of competitions and things like that, going right out onto the course with a game might be a little nervy for them. And so you could introduce this in one of your supervised practices, name the game, show them how it goes and things like that. Then when you get on the course, the level of anxiety is much lower because they already know what they're doing. You're not introducing it on the golf course. Furthermore, it helps you maintain pace of play on the course so you don't have to worry about holding people up. So I think that the idea here is that our games and virtually everything we do is done on an individual basis and hopefully in a team environment. So we're not necessarily just taking group out and saying, okay, everybody do the same thing, right? So you can find all kinds of games online, but those games aren't designed for your student specifically. So I want to profile my students. I want to know exactly what they need, design games for them so their results are more guaranteed. So let's talk about how would you go about designing games that you know would work for your students. First, identify the level of play. It could be a single level of play, like all players with 32 handicaps, or all players with 4 and under, or it could be a mixed group of handicaps. And then decide what needs improvement. Now, keep in mind that we're not trying to improve all of golf at the same time. We're trying to take a skill, simplify it down, encourage them to be curious about how to get it better, discover for them what's the best for that particular skill, and then learn how to practice it. Next, identify the typical mistake. Be very clear on what the mistake is or what's going to cost them and what the pain point might be. And then identify what alternative is there to that, right? And those alternatives can be one or more. The idea is to have them choose what's the most helpful for them. Then decide how to measure the results. For example, how many holes are we going to play? You don't have to play a game for 9 holes. You can play a game on each hole if you want. Or you could play one game for 3 holes, another game for 3 holes, another game for 3 holes. Depends on how long you're out there, what you're trying to get. But this is basically your framework for when you set these games up. to be very conscious of exactly how you're doing it. Then assign a name to your game. The name should be, kind of clever, kind of memorable, something that's easy to remember. But in any case, name them, because that gives you a common line of communication with your students, so that as you're talking about it, they can say, oh, I love that fat long game or whatever, and everybody knows what they're talking about. And then decide on what your award is going to be. So before you start the game, you're going to be saying, okay, for whoever wins, this is what you'll get. So you're appealing to their natural reaction is what's in it for me. Bo, feedback on that.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's I think something I'm forgetting to do is name the game, and so finding good creative names. I'm thinking of some now is really good, because you always get those students that they're referencing the game in one one set of terminology, and then somebody else is referencing it in another one. And when you're looking at coaching programs and all that, a big part of it is creating community, and it's hard to do that when everybody's not they're not communicating the same things, right? And so love the idea of naming the games, and then obviously finding the skill level is huge. It's like, you don't want to take somebody out that says, hey, once you lose a ball, see you later. It's if they're a beginner, right? It's it's that type of thing. And so finding those different challenge points, I think, is huge. So yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Jay. Good stuff.
Yeah, well spoken. So another thing to think about is we go through these 6 features of how do we design games. Let's make sure they're appropriate for our skill levels. They're well thought out. Got a name, got an award. But at the end of our programs, we're going to be doing surveys. And those surveys are to identify the things that are the most important to students. So when you do your survey, you can say, hey, give me your top 3 games for the year. Well, they're going to give you back the things that they remember, the things that were most important to them. That helps you decide what to keep and what to abandon, right? So you're always going to be updating based on what your students say, what made the most difference, what was the most memorable for me. So here's an example of a graphic that I use to introduce a game before heading out with a group of intermediate players. Now, a little backdrop to this is when I started coaching years ago, my cousin was a PGA player, a major winner, by the way. And I asked him, I said, in all the times you've played a lot of pro-ams. From what you've seen in pro-ams, what 1 or 2 things could you talk to me about that would help my students the most? And he said, oh, man, that's easy. Number 1, everybody aims at the flag. And number 2, they never hit enough club. If you could resolve those 2 things, you'd be coach of the century. And I never forgot that. I thought, okay, that seems pretty good. So here's an example of combining what he told me into what we know is one of the huge factors in people shooting horrible scores, and that is being short-sighted. All right, so I call this fat long. Now, in this graphic, you'll see some of the stats that I put down over here and over here to show the benefits in measurable data for what I call sword versus shotgun. And so this is a dispersion measure. So each of the groups of X's are placed, and they're exactly the same grouping, but by showing the students the difference in score and opportunities, it becomes very, very clear the effect of short-sighting, which is on the right, and also the effect of what I call fat long, hit to the biggest area of the green, to the back fringe as much as you can. On average, you're going to end up being better. All right, so this is something that we would review before we go out on the course, right? And so here is the game for intermediate players. So we start out with identify the level of play, intermediate. Decide on which skill needs improvement. We're going to stop short-sighting. Determine the typical mistake, aiming at the flag, don't take enough club. Then identify the alternatives. Play fat long. Forget the pin, hit to the biggest area of the green. Give yourself a chance. Now, if you wanted to set it up, we could set up features on the side, on the short side of the green, and have them play some short-sided shots. Then we can go to the fat side and have them chip or pitch from there to the pin, and they very quickly see how much better they are with plenty of green to work with. Now, if we're using this for approach shots, so this same game can be used for two different things, we're gonna encourage them to hit the shots overly wide of the long side. Now, they're not going to really understand that, and so what you're going to be talking about is playing the odds, right? The odds are if you aim at the long fat side of the green, a third of the time you'll hit it next to the pin, you weren't even trying. A third of the time you'll hit it to the fat long side. A third of the time you'll hit it too wide, but you're still okay. You're not short-sighted. And these games help them to understand why these things are valuable. Next, decide on how to measure the results. So play the hole as a par 3 for chipping. So if you're chipping on a short-sided or long-sided nature, say you have one shot to get it on the green and then 2 putts. So that's a par 3. Can you get it down in 3 or not? If you're using approach shots, so let's say you're using this drill from inside 100 yards or from 50 or 60, you've identified that, wow, most of my players are good at 50, they're terrible at 30, so play it from 30, right? So you can modify these to suit what you say you need. And then assign a name. So I call it fat long or forget the flag. So many times on this approach shot game, I'll go out before the session starts and take all the pins out of the greens, and I won't tell them where they are. And they all of a sudden realize they play better without the pins in. Their goal is to hit it to the biggest part of the green. And then consider rewards. And I've already gone through these. So scoreboard, wall of flame, sleeves of balls, wine glasses, beer mugs, that kind of thing. Corey, good to see your name on the list today. Give me a couple of takeaways from this.
Hey, Jay. I think that this is great. The thing that I've always sort of struggled with is the measurable part. So creating the games and having a scoreboard and then being able to kind of monitor their progress is what I think golf instruction has been missing for a long time. So that's why it's neat to see all of us getting together to talk about these kinds of things and also doing it on the golf course where people struggle the most. Instead of just setting up these games on the practice facility, the ability to do it on the golf course and having people realize that there's games within the game of golf that will help them sharpen their skills. That's what I'm taking away the most from this chat.
Well said. Very cool. Yeah, what I'm finding is a lot of my players use their game names when they ask their friends, hey, you want to go out and do a practice session with me today? And they'll say, sure. What game are we going to play? And they'll say, fat long or forget the flag. And so you've created a common language that pulls the community together. There's a common motivation to achieve a certain level of improvement. And the other thing I like is it helps you focus on one thing and not just all of golf.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about how you can manage this for various levels of players. So one of the games that I like to play the most is what I call Roll It, because I can't tell you how many players that I work with, they start out as the 35 handicap player or 40 handicap player, average score of 120 or whatever. And one of the main reasons I found is because their husband, in this case, a lady who first started out or a junior, their parents or their husband or somebody gave them an old 60-degree wedge that's the weight of an anvil. And they said, this is what you use when you get close to the green. And so here they are, 5, 10 feet, 15 feet off the green with a 60-degree lob wedge and just throwing up all over the course. And so in order to get that lob wedge out of their hands, we say, okay, what we'll do is we'll play a little game. It's going to be your lob wedge against your putter. And what we're going to do is we're going to play from these positions toward the middle of the green, and you set up a mark in the middle of the green and say, I'll give you 5 shots with your lob wedge and 5 shots with your putter, or 5 shots with your lob wedge and 5 shots with your fairway metal. One of them you're going to fly to the middle of the green, the other you're going to roll up to the middle of the green, and let's keep score. So you can establish a par 3 or a par 4 for really low handicap players. The par could be 2, right? Can you get up and down? But in any case, you're creating a game with a name, with a scoring method, and a relatively obvious outcome. Because you can say to somebody, it'd be better if you didn't use your lob wedge, but they're not going to remember it as much as when they try to use their lob wedge and they see a complete discrepancy into an alternatively better way to go. This is another one that I really like, and it's helped a lot of people, particularly on when we first take them out for assessments, when they're not used to being judged or playing with others. They might be embarrassed to have people see them playing not so well, all of the kinds of frustrations and anxieties that you have, or for people who tend to overhit. I call it good enough. And so when we get on the tee, I'll say to them, okay, here are the rules for the game. After you hit your shot, can you find your golf ball? If they say yes, I say, okay, great. Because if you hit your ball, even if you hit it really well and you can't find the ball, we've got us a problem. Right, so you got to find the ball. The next thing is, after you hit that shot, did you incur a penalty of any kind, or were you in a hazard? The answer is no. Say, okay, fine. The third question is, are you in a position to hit your next shot without impediment? Right? So did you hit a great drive, but you're behind a tree? Well, that's not helpful. Okay. So my good enough game is to encourage that you ask yourself, can I find the ball? Did I incur a penalty? Am I in position to hit a next shot? If I can answer those correctly, the response is good enough. That really helps them understand that even if that shot wasn't up to your standards, leave it behind. Move on with a good mindset for your next shot. It opens up the idea that we can talk about the fact that golf is a game of recovery, not of great shots. And so what you'll do is give them 1 point for every shot you left behind. And so this doesn't help them immediately. It'll build over time. But I have students that I've had for 4 and 5 years now, and they'll walk off from a bad shot and they'll say, good enough. So they remember it. They start to build it in. And that's our job, is to sort of the drip torture test, right? Start introducing these notions and have them slowly come about it. Double the break. So at my golf course, we have 3-tier greens or 4-tier greens that look gigantic, but they're very undulating. And so having 4 and 5 foot breaks is average, right? And so what we saw was the lack of understanding that if the ball is moving away from the hole as it slows down, it's going to be much further away than if it's moving toward the hole when it slows down. And so we can demonstrate that. We can show how that works. And so then what we talk about is, look, let's get outrageous here. Let's just completely blow up the idea of this exact line. I'm going to ask you to tell me where your line is, and then we're going to double that, and you're going to putt it at that line. And the idea is to give 1 point for every putt that finishes in their short putt circle. So what we're trying to do is to have them understand how putts work when they're going the fastest and how they break when they're going the slowest, how that works with the average outcome of the putt. Keeping in mind that particularly for beginners, the idea is we've got to 2-putt, folks. We don't want a 3-putt. We got a 2-putt. So this is going to help them understand how to 2-putt more often, right? And so I do this from even as short as 5 feet. And it is a remarkable transformation to see when people go, oh my God, I never thought I could play that much break and have it come anywhere close to the hole, right? So those are 3 games that I play with beginners all the time. So Dave Linkhorst, have you played any of these games, and do you have any suggestions for beginners? And Dave, you're muted right now.
Hello. I am distracted. I'm at work right now. I'm listening, and things that I do with people on the golf course is, especially newer players, I will put them on the green and say, in this area, you would want to be able to one putt, and then we'll go a little further away and say, here's where you would want to be able to two putt. So work your way and explain when you get to a point where you can't control the distance, that it would be a goal to get down in two shots, and then take them off the green and say par would be if you got in three shots, but the ability to score is when you turn three shots into two. And then take that to the fairway, where from here, once you're able to reach the green, that if you can get on the green and two putt, that would be par. But if you turn those three shots into two, you're saving a stroke. And so I do that on the course with them.
Yeah.
On my students.
And are you in the habit of scoring these games and keeping track of them over the season, or is this just one?
No. I did. Charlie King had a nice scoring system where he would track your short game, basically all your short game shots, and give you a handicap. I did that with. I was coaching a university team for a couple of years. I did that. I thought there was some value in that. And
yeah.
The team wanted to improve their handicap and compete against each other, so they saw the results on a piece of paper where, oh, this person's in first, I'm in second, or whatever. So there is value in that. I don't do a whole lot of teaching. I'm just here listening to see if I can pick up anything for the little bit I do.
I hear you. Well, I appreciate your comments. So all the RGX mentors have dozens of actionable ideas for playing levels, and we'd love to share them with you. You can, if you have any questions about what we talked about today, if I confused you in any way, contact me at j@rgxcoach.com. But go to explore at rgx.com to set up a conversation and see what kinds of other things that we can help you with, because we'd love to see you in our community and be able to share ideas and be able to take advantage of your ideas as well. If you want, you can scan this barcode here on the screen, the rgx.com explore, to set up a call and a meeting. And also, I discovered that our next on-course group coaching sessions are starting this month, and there are 2 available spots in it. So if these kinds of tips and actionable ideas, if you think this might help you and might help your students, certainly give us a ring at explore@rgxcoach.com. Express your notion, and we'll try to give you some ideas as to how we might be able to help you. So let's see. We've got a couple minutes before we have a hard stop here. So I'll reach out to my buddy, Bo Baker, and give me the last words on today's session, Bo.
Well, Jay, I think anything we take from you and implement into our coaching, I think is going to be pretty darn good. So I learned a lot, and I think I would definitely emphasize that of, there's so many ideas out there, right? And it's at the end of the day, the more we can get people on the course and kind of answering their own questions through games and doing that stuff, I think the better the coach you're going to be. And I think you hit all of those spots. And so, I love it. Thanks for the overview. Definitely going to implement it. Good stuff.
Terrific. Well, I'm so grateful that all of you shared a little of your time with us today. I hope to see you again in one of these features, and have a good day, and talk to you next time.